I'm very pleased to be here on My Magical Thing with Nikki Wyrd. Nikki, it's lovely to see you. You are the chair of Breaking Convention, Europe's largest and most fabulous psychedelics conference. You are the editor of the Psychedelic Press Journal, writer, speaker, magician, former section head of the British Isles section of the Illuminates of Thanatyros, many, many other things. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your magical thing.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
Super. Please, may I see your magical thing, Nikki?
Oh, okay. Here is my magical thing.
Oh, very good.
It is, as is the tradition on your series, it's a stick. Huh. But this is not just an ordinary stick. This is a special magic stick. It's a piece of holly. I'll show you a bit more detail of it. So we've got the end here. It's got a bit of bark left on it, and then that's the stem, and at that end it's sort of like cut and polished, so it's very fine. So this piece of holly grew on a tree in a cemetery in Norwich, and it was a cemetery that I would walk through every morning and every afternoon to take my child to and from her primary school when she was at infants. And so I would walk there and I would walk back, and I would walk there and I would walk back every single day. And this holly tree is right beside the path in the cemetery, and it grew in like a shape of a pyramid. I think there's a particular sort of type of holly which does that. So like a cone shape. Very fascinating, and I loved it. And right next to the trunk, some of the side branches would grow in a very strong vertical manner, and I thought those would like make a really good staff because they're sort of like quite good. But all of the ones that were thick enough to make a staff out of were very high up in the tree, very hard to reach. So I noticed that there were some that were growing further down, but they were much too thin to actually use as a staff. So I thought, well, eventually they will be big enough, maybe in like 2-3 years from now. So in 2 or 3 years, I'll come back one day and cut one of these staffs from this holly tree. And that seemed like a really powerful thing, because it was a tree that really sort of spoke to me as every time I walked past underneath its branches on the path on the way to school. And so every day I would touch the particular part of the tree that I was envisaging using as my staff. It's a nice thing. And every day I did this for 2 or 3 years and touched it on the way there and on the way back. So 4 times a day, and I would sort of not in a particularly sort of major way, but just sort of, sometimes just sort of gently brush it, but just to recognise it's working, growing every single day. And there came a point one summer when I was like, it's nearly big enough, but not quite. I think probably next year it will be the right sort of size. And then a few weeks after that, I walked through the cemetery, and some maintenance people had been there, and they had cleared lots of the undergrowth. They had cleared underneath the holly tree, and they had cut down the piece of wood that I'd been touching every day for 3 years. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a shame. But there was nothing I could do about it. It was gone, and I was a bit sad. I took my child to school and came back again, and I was like, oh, that's really, so I spent the day being a bit upset, but sort of, getting on with things, and so it goes. And then that afternoon, I went to collect my child from school, and as I walked through the cemetery, on the other side of the cemetery, much further away than where the tree grew, there was a gravestone, and a piece of wood was leaning up against it. And that's strange, and it was just one pole. And I went closer up to it, and it was the piece of wood that I'd been doing this with every day. And there was no other pieces of wood around at all, just this one piece. And it had all of the side shoots very neatly trimmed away from it, so that it was pretty much just a staff ready to use. And I recognised it was definitely the right piece, because there was a certain sort of bit where it just curved very slightly about sort of breast height. And so there it was, waiting for me. So I picked it up and brought it home with me, and then carefully cut the top cubit off from it. The cubit, of course, being the length from the elbow to the fingertip. So, yeah, traditional length for a wand. I think it's so you can hide it in your sleeve or something. Anyway, so I cut the top cubit off of it, and then I stripped the bark off it while it was still green, and shaped the top so it was like sort of a pointy pencil type of thing, but made it sort of not quite so. So it was just pointy, but a bit more elegant than just having a straight flat bit of it. And I left part of the bark because that's the part that I touched as it was growing, was the bark, and to remind me of the fact that it's a thing that was growing. And over the years, it's gained huge amounts of patina. I think I put some oil on it at one point, but mostly the waxy sort of oil that you have on this is just from years and years of touching it and using it. I don't use it very much these days because it's more for sort of extending your point when you're in a group, so you can point more effectively. But that's my magical thing. And the remaining part underneath it, which is about as tall as me, sits in a cupboard somewhere waiting to be turned into an actual staff. There's work still to be completed. So this is my magical thing, and it's magical because of the way that I interacted with it before it became an object while it was still alive. And it's magic because of the way that it saved itself and came to me, which is very magical. And it's very magical because of the way that it's been used ever since that time. So when I hold it, it makes me know that I am a magician and can do magic. That's my magical thing.
Nikki Wyrd, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that story of slow chaos magic, slow diligence, attention, and then a suitably synchronistic weird thing that happened to bring you your magical wand. Thank you so much.
Combination of luck and observation. Thank you very much.
All right, loads of love. I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.